Welcome back, everybody. Today's video is going to be about defensive aggro, a very important mechanic in the game of Dota 2. I'm going to be breaking down why you use defensive aggro, the mechanics behind defensive aggro, how you can properly practice it to get the hang of it, and also going to be talking about some common misconceptions and mistakes of people overutilizing it to ensure that you are not hurting yourself by doing so. So let's first dive into the why of defensive aggro. Defensive aggro lets you manipulate the positioning of enemy melee creeps by issuing an attack command on an enemy hero while you're within 500 range of those creeps. When you do this, the creeps will start to aggro towards you, allowing you to pull them closer to your side and make them safer to last hit. You can only do this once every 3 seconds, as there's a short cooldown for when the creeps can re-aggro. Let's watch that footage back in slow motion to break down exactly what's happening here. So Wraith King is going to issue an attack command on the Legion commander. Right there. Now, since his hero is within 500 range of these two melee creeps right here, and he moves backwards, the creeps will chase after him. Now he's going to issue another attack command on Legion right now, and the creeps are going to chase him again. Now, earlier I mentioned that you can only creep aggro once every 3 seconds. So let's break down how that works here. So he's going to defensive aggro. Now, the caveat of this 3-second cooldown is that these creeps will only chase you for 2.3 seconds. So you're going to see the creeps chase, and then they stop chasing 2.3 seconds later. There is now a 0.7 second window until you can aggro them again. So you're going to see him do that here on the second time. This little pause where the creeps de-aggro you, and then he aggros again. So getting the hang of that timer is absolutely essential to defensive aggroing. So let's recap exactly how it works. You have to issue an attack command on an enemy hero within 500 range of the creeps, not the hero. The hero can be anywhere. Then the creeps will chase you for 2.3 seconds, after which they will then stop chasing you. But after 3 seconds, you'll be allowed to aggro them again. As promised, I'm going to now show you how I think you can best practice this. Pick any hero you would like and load into demo hero. Now, if you haven't already, go into your settings, type console, and make sure you have a console hotkey set. Now, open your console with that hotkey and type Dota_range display 500. And once you type that, what you'll notice is there's a nice little cute ring around your hero telling you exactly how much 500 range is. This is a command you can only use in private lobbies and will help you get a good sense of the range of creep aggro. Next, go ahead and spawn any enemy hero. Give yourself a ward on the high ground so that you can see them. Practice A-clicking with this circle being around the creeps. As you see, they will attack. You can even get a little bit more in-depth practice by trying to get only one creep but not the other. See how I only got one? And I noticed that I can't move range creeps because of their range. They won't move. Maybe they'll move slightly, but you can't really utilize it on range creeps. And just get the hang of this. Just practice dragging, get an idea of the cooldown. Maybe I'll go like a bit early and show you that it doesn't work. Then I'll do it again and get only these 2 creeps. Then I can try to get only this creep. And so this will give you a really good flow of the timing, the range, as well as how long they chase you for. As promised at the beginning of the video, I'm now going to talk about some common mistakes and misconceptions that are surrounding creep aggro. This is actually a mechanic that a lot of you are already using, but you're using it incorrectly. Believe it or not, the footage that I used earlier was from a 1K MMR average game. To clearly understand the misuse of creep aggro, we have to understand what actually happens when we do it. The most common series of events that happens is as follows. You issue an attack command, their 3 melee creeps go to your range creep, and your 3 melee creeps go to their range creep, creating a separation in the lane that looks like this. This is the situation you will find yourself in the most. Now, why would this situation potentially hurt us? Example number 1, as shown. He's Leshrac against Storm Spirit. He outranges Storm Spirit, which means he's able to right-click the Storm, be aggressive, and look to harass him. But what happens when the separation occurs is that he has to go back and get his creeps instead of being aggressive. So he misses out on an opportunity to do just that while also missing a creep. Other important note here, to get the enemy range creep, both heroes are going to have to walk forward slightly out of position compared to what they normally would be. Notice the Storm walks forward and the Lesh walks forward. This is in a 3K average game, guys. So clearly all of you are using it. Now, this mechanic will be much more powerful if the enemy has no way to secure the range creep. If Storm had to walk up and CS this, then maybe you can get the deny, maybe you can harass him a bit more, but he just walks up Remnants and gets the last hit. And Leshrac also has Lightning Storm. So if you're a hero that has a way to secure it and the enemy doesn't have a way to secure it, there's a lot of ways that you can use defensive aggro like this and it will be beneficial. But since Storm can secure that range creep, that does not apply here. So the first instance is not being able to be aggressive because you have to go back and get your creeps. Now let's rewind. If this instance applies to you where you'd like to be aggressive and defensive aggro actually prevents you from doing so, there's a much better approach to utilize instead. What we would like to do is harass this Storm with right clicks. However, anytime we right click and we're not a hero with an orb like Huskar, Drow, Viper, OD, we will take aggro. So if we do that right now, we'll do exactly what Lesh does, where he pulls the creeps, right? Now, going back to the practice that we talked about earlier, we can actually abuse the 3-second cooldown of the creep aggro that we talked about in order to make sure that we can harass them without taking aggro. So what I have to do is I have to issue an attack command outside of 500 range. Then for the next 3 seconds, I can attack without drawing aggro. See how it aggroed me on the second attack? So watch, if the Storm's closer like he would be in the mid lane, I can do this without drawing aggro. I can also do it outside of range of this range creep without drawing aggro. I can then issue an attack command on Storm, then walk in range of the creeps and attack twice. And then I can walk back out and do it again without drawing creep aggro. So how do we abuse the creep aggro timer? We first issue an attack command from outside of 500 range of the creeps. Then we have time to get 1 to 2 right clicks off in that 3-second cooldown before they will aggro again. Then position your hero once again outside of 500 range and reinitiate the process. Let's go into example number 2 of how not to use defensive aggro. This is most commonly going to happen to you when you're a ranged hero. That is because melee heroes have innate stout shield block where they have a 50% chance to block the damage of creeps, and thus creeps will do a lot more damage to ranged heroes. So what happens when you're a ranged hero versus a melee hero, if you defensive aggro, which we see right here, and the opponent understands this dynamic of melee versus range and tanking creeps, then we find ourselves in a situation where both heroes have their separated range creeps. The enemy melee hero walks at you, zoning you away from the range creep that you would like to CS. So in matchups like this, it would have been simply better for the Medusa to play the lane without aggroing it and be able to use his snake once it's off cooldown again in order to secure the range creep. By aggroing here, he's actually forcing himself to walk further backwards than he otherwise would have to and giving Legion more control of the lane than he otherwise would have. He can also abuse the 3-second cooldown rule that we talked about in the previous clip if he would like to harass the Legion without defensive aggro. These 2 mistakes that I've showed you are the most common mistakes when it comes to defensive aggro. Most often is when you are a ranged hero. However, the important takeaways from this are that when you defensive aggro, their 3 melee creeps go to your range creep, and your 3 melee creeps go to their range creep. And the key is to assess how does that dynamic affect the hero that I am currently playing in the matchup that I am playing. Does it benefit me like it did for the Legion Commander or for the Storm Spirit? Or does it hurt me like it did for the Leshrac who was trying to be aggressive, or for the Medusa who was actually trying to be defensive but actually made himself have to be more defensive by pulling the aggro? So we've talked about how it works, when to use it, how to practice it, and common misconceptions and mistakes that people make. But the video's not quite over. I'd like to give you guys a little bit of a bonus clip for all the support players out there, because it is absolutely essential that you guys, even though this whole thing has been about cores, also understand the whys of defensive aggro and that you guys play an important role in it. Now, this is something that I only see very high MMR support players do. Very rarely do I see anyone else do it. And it is because it requires them to understand the dynamics of the core-to-core matchup in lane whether or not their core wants them to defensively aggro for them. Oftentimes, if your core is playing passively, you can assume that it's good to defensively aggro for them. What we're going to see is that the Spirit Breaker, who's my support, I'm the offlane Pudge, against Monkey King Carry, really bad matchup for me, is going to walk up and defensive aggro the creeps for me. Like so. Pulling them closer to me so that it is safer. And this was something that he did throughout the course of this lane, and it really helped me. So anytime you feel like your core is in a bad matchup, don't defensive aggro into tower for them, but defensive aggroing like you saw here is absolutely fantastic. Feel free to ask them if they would like you to do that for them if you're ever not sure. Now that wraps up officially our defensive aggro video. Let me know what you guys thought of this new format as we're trying to make things more crisp, more clean, and more concise. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you learned from this, any major takeaways, and anything you feel like I might have missed that you'd like to see in future videos. Thank you so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. See you in the next one.